So we will see a small video address of a member of the European Parliament from Sirpa, Pietikäinen. I hope I pronounced it right. And it's a kind of appetizer for our next panel. Thank you.
I'm very happy that the European Union has come up with the retail investor strategy finally. Because the retail investor is in the focus of our actions, or at least it should be. Because quite a lot of the money, quite a lot of investment decisions are made by retail investors in one hand. And then on the other hand, the retail investor is the person who has weaker information than the market in general, or the big or institutional professional investors. Quite often the retail investment products can be very complex, they can be packed, and it is unclear the knowledge about the cost structure, the investment scale, the timetable, the risk assessment, what type of the risk, and when does this risk occur, in the upfront or middle or during the whole investment, is it a political risk or technology risk or what type of the risk. Plus then people do need to have the advice how much risk they can bear. And on the other hand, the information also, is it so wise to get, for example, capital guarantees on the investment on the sake that you actually do not earn anything. So you would need to have on the key information document the understanding on what is the perspective on the investment when it comes to risk, profitability, and the reasoning why and in which point the risk is biggest and the profitability is biggest or smallest. It should have a benchmark on general market information, and so you would need to have an extra justification to see if you see, for example, a forecast of a 10% return on investment compared the general market advice that it should be 2%. And then, yes, it might be a good investment, but that sort of points out the need for the seller to be very clear on the assumptions they make and the knowledge in transparent way how they think that the profitability is going to develop. And at least that's important than the guarantees or the prospects on yields is, of course, the cost structure. Because you could have very good and lucrative yields, but then again the cost structure is such that actually it is eating up all the profits. And there's a lot to be done on key information document in this concern. We also, when it comes to key information documents, should have a pan-European platform free of charge where you can compare different kind of products, because as you know, it can be quite a nightmare to compare different kind of insurance, fund, shares, or different banks with different kind of fund structures and their profitability, their risk, their assessment of the yields. And this kind of a platform where you could make the comparison is a bit of reference to nutritional value tablet in a way, one could say, and that sort of enables you to compare the calorie and vitamin or whatever protein contents of the two alike products or very different products, let's say a porridge and a sandwich. This hopefully can be achieved. And of course, after the sale, the investor should have the right to know and update how much the investment is yielding and what is happening with the cost structure, for example, or how good is the product performing compared to general market. And yes, please do remember, the past performance is not a prediction of the future. So we make huge mistakes and misleading cases if we rely on this. Then another big issue is the reliable investment advisors and advice. You can of course buy it. The average cost at the minimum is 5,000 euros, and I'm not going to pay 5,000 euros if my total portfolio to invest is, for example, 10,000. And so we run a risk that the investors without advice actually choose products that are not under a regulation, so they can be frankly a bluff. They can be a high risk products like crypto assets, or then they can only choose one what they happen to face in the first place. That's why I've been a bit hesitant to totally ban the investment advice that is not independent. So the banks, for example, could be giving it in the future. But what I want to see is that there would be a clear sign in the table, on the web page, on all over the place, that the investment is partially paid. It is actually having financial or other benefits for the people selling. So it is knowledge that helps you to understand that if you buy a car, you get reliable and good information about that car because that is secured by the law. But you can't assume or expect to have reliable information about some competitor's car, and that is the reason why we would need to have this kind of a platform where you can compare the products, and you have that kind of a structure where you encourage the people, retail investors, to visit several providers of investment choices. The role of the investment advisor is to provide support to the consumer to obtain a better outcome, better performance for the investment. And that's why you can't totally replace it with the artificial intelligence, because people, their likes and dislikes, their ability to absorb the risk, their investment profiles, their age, there are a multitude of issues that actually means that you need face-to-face, very tailor-made investor advice. And so, yes, that is in place, but please do make it clear that the remuneration is also done by the seller. So it is a selling exercise, a bit like it's a selling exercise of selling a car. Then, of course, it is the qualification of advisors. The more information we have, the more complex and global the products come, the more qualified the advisors should be. And there I'm looking, of course, to CFA and other actors to really upgrade the capabilities, the knowledge and the performance of all the advisors. And then last but not least, it is the European supervision. The ESAs should have stronger and better forces to ensure that retail investor is protected. And by the way, that concerns not only the financial and profitability gains, it concerns the environmental and sustainability claims too. So I hope that these thoughts help you to navigate your way and form your opinion on this retail investment strategy. And yes, please, let me hear what are your thoughts and needs and proposals in this context. Thank you.
So we will have a short coffee break right now for about 25 minutes, and then we will start with the next panel called Empowering Individual Investors, Improving Outcomes and Ensuring Best Execution. Yes, thank you. And it will be here. So for our next panel, we have a small video address of another member of the parliament. His name is Eero Heinäluoma. And it gives us a flavor of the next panel. Thank you.
Thank you to Better Finance for the invite to this important conference in the beautiful city of Vienna. I'm very sorry I cannot be with you in person, but happy to share in this way some thoughts around empowering individual investors and in particular around the retail investment strategy. We all know the problems ordinary investors in the European Union are facing. To put it bluntly, many of those who can already afford to invest, not given in times of cost of living crisis many are facing, pay far too much for what they get in return. I'm sure the experts of the following panel will discuss the reasons and impact further in depth. This is certainly not a new problem. What is new thought was that for the first time this Commission wanted to address this problem of loss of welfare effectively. Although the final outcome of the Commission proposal is far from perfect, it is fair to say that DG FISMA did an important job with several good new ideas. You probably all have seen the draft report of the rapporteur, my good colleague Stephanie Jan Kurtan, which was published last week. The debate about the report will start in the week of the 24th of October, with a very short deadline for amendments set on the 26th of October. It's no secret that views around this file differ quite substantially in the European Parliament, but also in the Council. My political group has taken a consistent line. We put the interests of the retail investors first. If you really care about ordinary investors, the inducement problem needs to be tackled effectively. Maybe not all the results today, but not also in too distant future. There are enough examples from the Netherlands, the UK, but also outside the European Union to demonstrate that the ban is the approach to follow. I also welcome the idea of creating benchmarks to compare the performance of investment products. We have heard the industry arguments in all different forms. Such a change will be disturbing, there will be an advice gap, and the pension of distributors will come at risk. I have some understanding for these critics. Most of the arguments are still not really convincing or contradicted by the reality. New legislation is per definition to an extent disturbing, and this is not a bad thing as such, as sticking to the status quo in this field is making ordinary citizens poorer. And of course, it could have an impact on the income of the distributor. But I believe citizens need to save in the first place for their own pension, not for the pension of their bankers. I hope to be a realistic politician and also aware that there is a very uphill battle as the vested interests are enormous. And they have been clearly heard in the Parliament, but also in the Council and in the Commission. At the same time, it's important that policy is fact-based and is not driven by scaremongering. For example, there are several things which we have to look carefully. And even if there are regions where retail markets work relatively well in the European Union, overall they are too expensive and too often unperforming. Indeed, despite the comments of mainly from industry, costs and fees remain a critical factor. As outlined by ESMA, there is need to look them carefully when we are doing our decision. This is more than substantial. Therefore, if we are serious about our wish to strengthen the European economy, about empowering European consumers, we urgently need structural change. In 2020, Commissioner McGuinness promised to put consumers at the center of the financial sector. With this retail strategy, she fulfilled partly this promise. So there is still 9 months before the elections, and there is a possibility to make a good, not only proposal, but good legislation for the next years. I hope that this file will be concluded before the end of this Parliament mandate period. It's clear ordinary citizens cannot keep picking up the bill for sometimes unsustainable business models. Let's therefore put the interests of customers first and use this strategy file to introduce the structural changes which are needed. This is what European Union consumers expect us to do. I wish you a very fruitful debate and always open to receive suggestions to improve the proposals. Thank you.
So, and I will give the floor quite quickly.
Thank you to Better Finance.
Digitalization. I would like to give the floor very volley to the moderator of this panel. In fact, Karel is already, I think, really an institution on a European level. He's the CEO of the Center of European Politics and Studies. And as you have seen in the last panel, he's a critical mind, and he takes care of a lot of things, market constraints, for example, which are really in focus of investors right now. So, Karel Lano, please be so kind to be the host of the next panel. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the introduction. If I could call the different panelists to the table, Alexandra, Andrea, Salvatore, and Eric, please take a seat. I think the ladies in the middle and the man on the sides. We are touching on now in this panel of a very hot issue. In Brussels, you heard it already from Eero a moment ago. Eero is on the SND, Eero Heinäluoma, let's say an Finnish MEP. He's involved in this debate, which we have in the European Parliament now, on a proposal from the Commission, on which Andrea will say something in a moment, to basically align in all EU rules concepts like, they call it value for money, but clarity, transparency, and the cost which investors pay for products, also rules on marketing, and then also some elements on financial literacy. These are the three elements which are in there. It's a fairly complex proposal, as I was discussing with Andrea a moment ago. I challenge, if you haven't done so, to try to read this proposal, which is on the table. But it is extremely contested, because what you have to know is that it's related to essentially to MiFID. Of course, it also modifies elements of the IDD, the Insurance Distribution Directive, the PRIPS, which you all know, I think, the information which you have to give for retail investment products. But this is a very old problem. It's a problem which we know since 1994. Sorry to go back so far, almost 30 years. The ISD, Salvatore will for sure know. We have started to follow this from that time, which had this provision in there. Conflicts of interest, if you sell investment products to retail customers, have to be prevented. They were further specified in MiFID I. Yeah, sorry for all these abbreviations. That's how we talk about this in Brussels. And MiFID I, which was 2007, which further clarified concepts like best execution. What is best execution, which we also speak about now in this panel. And then further clarified in MiFID II, which was basically the result to some degree of the financial crisis, but which took time until 2017 to be formally adopted, which led to then a whole debate about, are inducements prohibited, yes or no? And there are different views into member states about this. There's one member state, the Netherlands, not the first the best, which has clearly said they should be banned. And of course, the Netherlands had a huge scandal, which are called the woekerpolissen in the Netherlands, that far too high fees were charged on certain products, above all polissen, which is insurance products. But of course, we see, according to me, the same problem in many other member states. And ESMA has done over the last years a great job in trying to come up with very good data about this. Again, you can consult it on ESMA's website. It's fantastic work, because before, when we were speaking about the problem, we didn't have comparable data. Or we had to use market entities like Morningstar and so on, which are often very expensive to buy. No, ESMA has extremely well detailed rules, which explain the problem extremely well. My problem is, if I see this whole debate, and of course, it's not difficult to speak about this here. You're all, I think, I'm preaching to the convicted. We cannot have a more performant capital market in Europe unless we have transparency. I mean, I think about this famous quote in US corporate law, sunlight is the best disinfectant. We need to have full transparency. I mean, that's why you can keep it in the middle, whether it should be a ban, yes or no, but at least there should be full transparency of costs which you as a consumer, as an investor, pay for certain products. And that we don't have at the moment, and that there are many groups which want to prevent it today in Brussels. So I see a total contradiction between those calling all the time ministers of finance, etc. We want capital markets union, but in the meantime, they act against what the Commission is trying to do, bringing more transparency in capital markets. So I hope, let's say, we will bring this out in this debate. Who would start? Probably Andrea, you start a bit where how you see this debate at the moment, because Andrea is one of the key file holders in the European Commission, and I'm happy that she's here, so she knows it inside out. Probably if you address some of the questions as you see it from your perspective, and then I probably pass to Salvatore, then to Andrea, and then Eric.
Thank you. I thought I'll maybe start out with presenting a little bit. I'm not sure everyone, like you have read it, everyone here in the panel, but I might underestimate you, of course, has read the retail investment strategy inside out. So maybe a few words on what we have proposed, what is the aim, and then I'm going to be very happy to indicate how I see the debate going. I don't have a glass, though, a wonder glass to tell me the future, but I will do. Sorry about this. Okay, what have we done? We've worked on this retail investment strategy for a long time. It had been announced in the Capital Markets Union action plan, and we looked into this, and the work on this was not straightforward. One of the goals, and you've already mentioned it, was to put the retail investor at the center, but also to provide a level playing field. So this means aligning rules in MiFID as well as IND to ensure there is a level playing field, and this is also not easy to do. So we had quite a few ambitions and challenges here. So indeed, what we have put on the table is the aim was to empower the retail investor, but through transparency, but also to ensure that he's adequately protected. Why do we do this? Of course, looking at the retail investor who needs to be able to save and get proper returns on the capital markets for his pensions, for instance, but also for other topics, but also, of course, for the Capital Markets Union. And our feeling was that we'll only be able to get the retail investor to really invest, to enhance retail participation, if we do ensure the retail investor gets a good deal. Otherwise, if they can't trust that they'll get a sensible deal, obviously we can't guarantee outcomes, but we can ensure a fair legal protection framework, and that's what we were aiming for. Now, the strategy is composed of very different topics. It's looking at very different topics. We start out with disclosures. We look at marketing disclosures. We try to address, to a certain extent, information overload. I know a lot of people will not actually read all the documents they get, so we try to have maybe a summary which quickly they can understand. We try to ensure marketing is not biased, and we try to look at how can we deal with the marketing on the social media and influencers. We're trying to address this. We are also looking at financial literacy, has come up a lot already in the discussion this morning. DG FISMA has done a lot of work on this together with the OECD recently, published two frameworks for adults as well as for younger children. And we are also trying to push member states to work on this. This is very important, of course, but we don't believe with financial literacy we're going to be able to solve all the issues. We are never going to make sure that everyone is going to be a financial market expert. So there are limits of what we can do. We need to look at other topics as well. Now, we have looked at the crucial, politically also very controversial topics, looked at inducements, and have suggested to change the quality enhancement tests, and have also looked at trying to improve the product governance rules to ensure value for money. Now, very briefly on these topics, on inducements, well, we've done an impact assessment. You might have looked at the impact assessment has concluded that actually a full ban would be the best thing to do. Looking at costs and benefits. However, then it was felt that this was going to be too disruptive, and therefore we didn't propose this, but we have tried to propose a two-step approach. Now, we have, of course, one of the important arguments against a full ban was the argument that this would all lead to an advice gap, and retail investors would stop investing at all because they wouldn't be able to get advice. Now, for this reason, against this background, one of the ideas was, and that's what we have put on paper, to ban inducements in areas where it cannot lead to an advice gap, which is the partial ban for execution only. And then, of course, we have also the ban for the independent advisors when they want to call themselves independent in IDD. This was still possible if they would take inducements. These kind of things we have also addressed. Now, we went, there is a lot of discussion all around it, and you might get to it. And maybe here in the panel, this will come up as well. The question is, of course, an argument we very often hear is the partial ban for execution only wouldn't be sensible, really, or wouldn't be needed because there wouldn't be a bias, because there wouldn't be any advice. Now, of course, I agree that maybe the bias is a lot bigger in the advice scenarios where we have chosen not to propose a ban, but instead go with different steps. However, we still see a challenge here. We still see nudges to retail investors to buy induced products. And, of course, it means that there is a lot of cost involved. Inducements means people have to pay a lot of cost, and cost, as you all know, is crucial for the return expectation. Now, going to the next point, we've also looked at what do we do in the advice scenario. Now, if we don't ban inducements in that scenario, what can we do? Well, we have tried to look. The assessment was that the quality enhancement test and the no detriment test that you have in IDD and in MiFID, they don't achieve necessarily what we wanted to achieve. And so we have tried to actually look at an obligation that already exists today for the advice, which is that you have to act in the best interest of your client. Now, this today also doesn't fully work. So we have tried to clarify and strengthen a little bit. But in principle, this is just a clarification of what should already be the obligation. So we have said that if you advise clients, you should be having an appropriate range of products. You should offer the most cost-efficient of similar products. And you should also look at whether some of additional features that the product you might want to be recommended are really necessary, and if not, maybe also offer another product. To me, admittedly, I think this is more or less common sense, but we get criticism on this as well. Finally, We are looking at value for money. Value for money is work that has already been ongoing, in particular from IOPA, but also a lot has been done from ESMA already in this area. We try to ensure that the outliers, those that we can see and that we see in your reports, in your cost and performance reports, that there are outliers that do not provide much return or sometimes any return really to the clients, that these outliers should not be marketed to retail investors. And to make this assessment a little bit more comparable, we think that we need to have certain benchmarks in this area. Now, this was a quick tour d'horizon on the retail investment strategy. How do I see this going forward? Well, we've started discussions in the council. You can imagine they are not straightforward. There are some areas where there is a lot more agreement. This concerns disclosure. This also concerns marketing. But of course, the big political topics, the inducements, also some criticism on best interest and value for money we haven't discussed in council yet. They are difficult, and we'll have to see where we go. You've also seen the draft report from the rapporteur. I don't know whether this is going to be the end in the Parliament. You've also just heard Mr. Heinäluoma, I think, who probably has a very different view. We'll have to see where it goes. Clearly, on our side, we still think that what we've put on the table is the right way forward, but I guess you're not surprised by that, and we'll try to defend this as much as we can.
Thank you, Andrea. I think a very good overview of this whole debate, which indeed is very complex, but I think what the Commission has done, just for you to understand, is streamlining all these different rules. There have been a lot of criticism in the past that PRIPS was not aligned with MiFID, with IDD. That's what this proposal does. It tries to align basically the rules on transparency, cost to investors, and then the value for money and so on, across all these different rules, which I think is an enormous achievement already, and it's a lot of work just to make sure that it more or less fits. Another organization which has been very active on this is ESMA. Very happy to have Salvatore here, who also been following this, as I said already, these matters since a long time. So Salvatore, how do you look at this? Of course, you cannot take a political position. You know,
of course not.
But you're a supervisor. You see what the markets are.
Yes, no, indeed, a lot has been already said on the retail investment strategy. So on my side, I will try to describe a little bit what is the work done by by ESMA in this respect, and also a kind of a general view on the retail investment strategy, because this clearly it's a very complex package, a very rich package. It does not stop with the level 1, obviously. It continues with the level 2 and probably the level 3, and there are mandated guidelines there. Therefore, as it often happens with the EU legislation, it's just the beginning of a journey that we will see the conclusion of which just later on. So just to start saying that obviously investor protection is one of the key strategic priorities for ESMA. It has been in the last few years. It is today, and it will continue to be in the future. Therefore, the key objective, which matches clearly with the objective of the CMU as well, is the one of ensuring that investors, retail investors especially, can safely and confidently invest in capital markets, in financial markets. What are the obstacles to that? The obstacles are, and I guess that we all know those obstacles, so conflicts of interest, high costs, information overload, information unclarity, unsuitable product being often sold to proposed, pushed to investors. And there is also an element of financial literacy, of course, which is an element which is important on the side of the investors themselves, but which also calls to public policies in this area. So does the retail investment strategy cover all these aspects? In a way or another, it does. Then we can, in some areas it goes much more in depth, in other areas it remains a little bit superficial because exactly there is the level 2 or the level 3 that will complete the picture. One key aspect is clearly value for money. It's clearly the cost of the product, the real value of the product for the investors. And in this respect, yes, clearly there are proposals concerning benchmarks, but there are also other proposals there. For example, trying to improve the disclosure to clients in the MiFID context, because the MiFID today, this is left basically to the freedom of each and every intermediary, which leads clearly to sometimes not easily comparison between different products. So standardization, so a dashboard in the PRIPS to summarize things, a layering in the context of the PRIPS KID in order not to allow to facilitate the clients to access this information in a gradual way or to the extent that the client wants. And ESMA clearly has done a number of actions in this area. So the cost and performance report that Karel was mentioning before has shown us constantly in the last few years that the cost eat a lot on their returns, probably too much, and that data is missing for a number of products. For example, for structured retail products, we have clearly less data than we have for UCITS, for example. Distribution costs often are missing, so information on inducements overall, which are not granular intermediary by intermediary, but which are overall, are missing. Therefore, in this respect, the Commission proposal, for example, has some important reporting requirement by industry to competent authorities and to ESMA, which will certainly facilitate the job of making also assessment on those aspects and on those important elements. And hopefully will lead to the comparability and also more competition among product manufacturers. We have shown in our CSAs, we have focused as a supervisory priority at ESMA in the last few years on cost and charges. We have shown on our CSA the common supervisory action organized on suitability, for example, that it's true that there is an article on suitability requiring intermediaries to assess whether less complex and less costly products are available. But at the same time, we know that then this can be relatively easily overcome by a justification which sometimes is pretty vague on why a product which is more complex or more costly has instead be proposed to client. So this is about the value for money. Inducements. Inducements, as Karel was saying, is a never-ending discussion. So I have been involved, I have been lucky or unlucky, depending on how you see it, to be involved in this discussion in the last few years. But it's always the same topics and the same arguments popping up and coming back. Therefore, in our advice to the Commission, we suggest that the Commission has to conduct an in-depth analysis. They've done, there is indeed the impact assessment that was mentioned before. I will not spend additional word on that in the sense that the logic of the proposal has been well explained. We have heard by the industry that for years that a total ban on inducement would determine an advice gap. And therefore, the Commission has put on the table a proposal saying, okay, if you do advice in a way which is really in the best interest of the client, though clearly the best interest of the client clause is always open to interpretation, to application, therefore, you can, subject to certain conditions, continue getting them. Therefore, let's do a partial ban for non-advised services. But now the same people who said before, be careful for the advice gap, we hear then comments that, hey, no, we also need inducements for non-advised services. Therefore, as I said, it's a little bit the same argument which come back. Let's see where we will land after the legislative cycle there. But I just wanted to mention also other aspects. So the disclosures.
Could I ask you one question, Salvatore? We know there is no inducement ban in the United States.
Yeah.
You're like the SEC. I hope one day you will become the SEC. How does the SEC do it to have the transparency in the markets? Why do we have much more competition on fees in the US than in Europe?
Yeah, this is a very interesting question, which, however, touches upon also the specific situation of the EU versus the US. The US is, for many aspects, a real single market. In EU, the market is still, let's say, divided into several national markets. This does not only apply to the side of the product manufacturers. Indeed, we see in our cost and performance report that there is an impressive difference also in cost and performance of products by jurisdiction. Therefore, hence why the CMU is an important objective, political objective as well. There is this element. There is an element of culture by retail investors, which we have to admit remains, because in some jurisdictions, some products are used by investors much more than in other jurisdictions. The SEC, for example, is not an insurance regulator, but here in Europe we have some jurisdictions which focus a lot on which the predominant product is are insurance products. Hence, this is very welcome, this approach of the retail investment strategy to try to harmonize further the requirements applicable to different types of products. Then, without talking, of course, about the powers of the supervisor, because obviously ESMA is not the SEC.
But that I know, let's say, but that anyway, Alexandra can probably invite you to take more enforcement actions.
Yeah. So in this respect, indeed, one part of the proposal strengthen the supervisory and enforcement framework. For example, it's not, in some cases, for example, on cross-border elements, the proposal, we really appreciate the proposal. For example, putting in the level 1 already the requirements to data collection on cross-border activity by investment firms, or the possibility, strengthen the powers to take precautionary measures by host competent authorities. In other cases, the measures are not huge, but still deserve mentioning. For example, mystery shopping. Mystery shopping is a tool which may be important, but we still hear from our competent authorities, some competent authorities, not everywhere, that there are legal obstacles to do it at the national level, for example. So good that now this tool is in the legislation, if it remains in the legislation, is the proposal at least, let's say. So we have some cooperation platforms, we are encouraged to do it, but clearly we will invest in these activities. We are open to do it, we are keen on doing this, but obviously there are also limitations arising from the legal framework and the governance which exist. Yeah. Then, besides that, I could mention other parts of the retail investment strategy, so the marketing, communication side, the influencer side, the disclosure, the digital disclosure, also some measures also the PRIPS, because clearly we are now focusing on MiFID, but in reality the package also includes some proposals on PRIPS, on which in our view we could and should go further. By the way, in line with what we have said clearly in the past in our advice to the Commission. Then, yes, I have heard also by one of the MEPs before some ideas around fund comparators, so a comparison tool, which is a more, which would be also a good idea, for example, to facilitate people in getting direct contact and direct, the possibility to check directly, the cost and performance of different products. I would probably stop here because I have talked already too much.
No, thanks. You, Salvatore. That was a very good insight from the side of ESMA. I turn to Alexandra, but I'm probably with the same question, why there is no fee competition in Europe? So you're in the midst of this as now in charge of better finance, looking at fees all the time, but why don't we have fee competition for investment products?
Yeah, this is a good question. I guess we would have more fee competition if the European Commission followed up on its own assessment and introduced the option that was supposed to be the most effective to tackle all the problems that were identified before in the reports on the distribution of retail investment products already in 2018. But still, I think that considering the political climate and the fierce opposition of many stakeholders to this most effective option, the ban, I really, and Better Finance as such, really appreciates a lot the effort done in the proposal and the elements of the proposal that for the time being are being discussed by both the Council and the Parliament. And just to maybe make it clear that for the time being, we have not really seen better proposals on the table to improve the situation of investors on the EU capital markets. And Better Finance for years has been really a staunch supporter of the CMU. The retail investment strategy we really see as a proper once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to change the status quo. We see many criticism concerning the proposal, and some of it really sounds as if some of the stakeholders would like to preserve the status quo, and this is not really a deal for retail investors, but it's been quite clear through many independent research, including the one from Better Finance, but also the impact assessment from the Commission, academic studies, that the current status quo is not really serving well investors. We do not get decent returns. We really do not have access to proper and good, independent and fair advice. And our opinion for years has been that retail investor is not really a full-time job. So we need really help to invest, to be able to trust in the market, be able to trust, to have trust in the product. And in our opinion, access to independent advice in the best interest of the client is really crucial, and the ban would have solved it most likely, because we actually have good examples in the Netherlands and in the UK. It didn't happen, and as you, Karel, said already, the effort to really align IDD and MiFID, it's already a great effort, and many elements of the proposal are going into this direction. So we, for example, quite like and appreciate the alignment in IDD and MiFID right now in terms of independent ban on inducements for independent advice. But our problem is that there is a possibility for member states to opt out and make advice mandatory for the sale of EBIPs. And this is a problem because, as Salvatore also said, PRIPS is part of the whole framework and part of Capital Markets Union. And we have the impression that sometimes also regulators forget that actually right now EBIPs constitute something like, according to EIOPA report, 70% of the sold PRIPs. So it's really a huge part of the market, and there we really don't get fair and decent returns. And we touched upon this also in the previous speeches and the previous panel, the issue of pension adequacy and pension products. It's really crucial, and Better Finance every year is publishing the report on the real return of the pensions and long-term investments, and we will have our colleague in the afternoon presenting the outcomes of this year edition, and it doesn't look good. So we are really facing people who are going to live in poverty soon, and without properly tackling the problem and also increasing participation in capital markets through pension products, we are not going to improve the outcomes. And without improving the outcome and providing a real incentive for retail investors, we are not going to drive and boost the participation in capital markets.
But why is our voice so marginal in Brussels?
Sorry, what?
Why is our voice so marginal in Brussels?
Yes, this is
apart from the Commission, of course, huh? But if I see the lobbies.
Yeah, this is a good question. This is a good question. I would think that since we meet regularly with the participants from the other side and other stakeholders, this is quite interesting because we really agree on at least two things. The one thing is we all want retail investors to participate more, and we all want, at least seemingly, to improve the outcomes for them. So not having enough support for the current, very, I would say, modest in ambition elements of the proposal of the European Commission is, yeah, it's not very good. It's pretty surreal.
We'll ask a market participant. Very good to have Eric here, let's say. So we have somebody from, you can briefly explain a bit, let's say, the company where you come from, but then also your views on the proposal. We discussed it before. I invited you to be constructive, but there is one element which they didn't like. But because you're in favor, I hope, let's say, overall, of what the Commission wants to do.
Yes, yes. Yeah, so hi, my name is Eric. for those of you who don't know me or the company I'm speaking for, so I'm a co-founder of Scalable Capital. What is Scalable Capital? We're an online broker and an online wealth manager. We are in the most European markets. Our biggest home market is Germany and Austria, and then also in Italy, France, Spain, and the Netherlands. We have 16 billion of client money on the platform. So for a young company, the brokerage started 3.5 years ago. That's a lot. And you can do on it's execution only. The clients can decide for themselves.
So there is no advice?
No, we have wealth management, no advice. So in the wealth management, we put together ETF portfolios. So the client doesn't decide the products. We put together strategies. It's only ETFs. But in the broker, you can do whatever you want. We do help you with content. So we produce contents and explain how certain products works and how the market works. But clients can do what they want. And so what I want to talk about is we'll talk about the advice situation and whether ban and partial ban, whether this makes sense or not. I can talk about this in a second, but you asked me to be friendly, so I'll start with something super cool, because I agree actually with everything you said here, that advice has a problem, and we all know it, we all experienced it. I experienced it in my own family. My own mother, she bought a life insurance product linked to capital markets, which is the worst you can buy. Not only because of the fees is just one thing. What people seldomly manage, what's as expensive is a capital guarantee. Capital guarantee sounds awesome, especially to my mother. She's a kindergarten teacher. Ooh, your capital is guaranteed. What it means, a huge pile of the money goes into products that cannot really generate a good return, sometimes even on the insurance company's own balance sheets, and then you get some insurance sprinkle on top.
You have to guarantee a minimum of 2 or 3%. Depending on the product. Yeah,
but my mother started investing. Stop talking about my mother in a second. Maybe it's a complex. I don't know. Okay. Anyhow,
Oedipus complex.
She was in the best times. She did this over. Let me think. Over the 80s, the 90s, and into the late 2000s. During that time, had you invested into index funds. Like were super little back then, she would have had a return of 7, 8, 9, maybe even 10%, including dividends, So long story short, I know the problems and I agree with you. However, now is my positives, we don't speak about, and I agree that within the advice world, not much changed, Since good old mother invested and now advice is pretty much the same. But there's a huge positive development. No one talks about this here today. It's the ETF development. And ETF is for me the rise of the retail investor. Because you said there's no fee competition investment products. Not if you sit in front of an advisor, but in the market, absolutely. ETFs are the fee competition. You have never seen something like this in capital markets. So ETFs, you all know the story, invented 70s, John Bogle, very early on, not that popular. And in the retail world, 20 years ago, no one really knew them. 10 years ago, people started to know them. And especially in the last 6, 7 years, especially in the last 5, it went off like this. Not only the investment sums, millions of people do it, millions of people. Also the United States, and the biggest market in Europe is not the Netherlands, not the UK, not Finland, it's Germany, Good old inducement Germany, where people are not even talking to an advisor anymore, Because they know the press educated them, and also you have these comparison sites and these personal finance, how they're called, forums. So the big one is Finanztipp. You might know them, Hermann Tenhagen, 2.5 million followers. People go there, they educate themselves, and finance can be made super complicated, but they actually make it quite simple. They explain what an ETF is. They even tell you what the top ETFs are. You don't need 10. You can start with 1, 2, or 3. That's enough, and set up a savings plan. And that's a huge thing happening. And that's a gigantic success story. Where do people buy these products? They buy them through online brokers. Because if you go to your insurance broker and says, can I have an ETF savings plan? He will try to talk you out of it, and he won't do the business for you. So
the Commission knows this example very well, but do you have competition in the German market on ETFs? Meaning competition between different providers?
Yes, the big asset managers. The biggest one is obviously BlackRock and then Vanguard, the two big Americans, but Amundi is the biggest one in Europe. I mean, you have tons. You have, I don't know, 15 ETF providers. Yeah. ETFs is also economy of scale. Yeah. So the cheapest products can be offered by the biggest animals in the room. So typically Vanguard and BlackRock. You see this also in the portfolio of our clients. And it's not only about costs. Yeah. It's really it's a brilliant product, yeah, because all the little things that professional investors would do, find the best location in Europe, Ireland, Luxembourg platform, negotiate double taxation treatments to get dividends from foreign stocks to a certain level, yeah. This is all done for you. You don't even have to think about it. So, and this is a really, really great development. And now the problem is that the original idea or the original problem, yeah, that also Andrea described with inducements and advice, I absolutely agree with that. Yeah, I've seen it, as I said. And now the compromise that's left on the table is ironically hurting exactly those online broker places where people buy these ETFs and leaves everyone else doing their old business. But the online brokers, they are being shot in the foot, and this hurts the do-it-yourself investors. And maybe one technicality. And yeah, and I think the tragedy here is, I don't think you'd want to do this. I think it's a big misunderstanding. Yeah? And the big misunderstanding, because if you read all the papers, yeah, from also the consumer protection organizations, if they're in favor of this partial ban, they never say we want to hurt online brokers and ETF savings plans. They never say this. What they say is, and there I agree again, there's a certain part of the market where you have salespeople. They're not doing advice, but they can still, I can be an insurance salesperson, I can sell you or your mother an insurance-linked product, and I don't even do advice. I just do, hey, here are the pros and cons, yeah, so a sales pitch. You as a consumer will, but you will think it's advice, because as soon as someone talks to you physically, you automatically, oh, this is my advisor. Yeah? And this was for me always a bit odd that this even exists, because this kind of distribution is not even directly under, in Germany, BaFin. Yeah? They get their license through the commercial registers, yeah? The Gewerbeordnung. So it's quite an odd thing. And this is all the examples go, we have to look at this. Yeah? Not even advice, not even an advice memo is filled out. We have to look at this. But the ban currently includes online brokers, and I think this would be a big tragedy. And when you talk to participants in the market that are pro-partial ban and you explain to them, you know what they say? You're right. It's a bit of a collateral damage. Collateral damage. Millions of people, we alone have close to 1 million users who invest on a month. We have 1.2 million savings plans who go into ETFs each month. Yeah, this can't be collateral damage. One last thing, because you asked.
You have to still explain why specifically is the ban hurting you? Because you're fully transparent in your fees.
Yeah. So why is it? So how do we make money? Most of the money comes directly from the client. So we have a membership model. You pay €5 a month, and you get all these savings plans, and so. It's kind of a Netflix model. Yeah, you pay a membership fee, and that's what we earn directly from the client. Then there's also, if you don't want to go for the membership fee, we charge trading commissions, and then also you earn money on interest rates. Yeah, it used to cost us. Now you earn money. We pass something on to the client, some we keep. Yeah, but for the ETF savings plans, yeah, we do get money from the big ETF issuers to pay for the order fees and the cost of settlement. Yeah, because even a small ETF savings plan, €100 has cost of settlement and trading fees. The big ETF issuers, like the big ones I mentioned, they have an incentive to subsidize the trading commissions so people buy their products. And how do they earn money? They earn money through the total expense ratio over time. Yeah? The product doesn't get more expensive, and this is also important to understand, because in ETF world, you do not have retail and institutional share classes. You don't have this. It's one product. So, for example, a big ETF issuer, they want that a big portfolio manager buys the product. So I'm a big portfolio manager. I want to place a bet in, not a bet, an investment, sorry. I want to invest in the US market because I think it goes up. I buy an S&P 500 ETF. It's the same cost that this person pays, the multi-billion manager, than the retail investor pays. It's the same product. There are no retail institutional share classes. So it comes out of the marketing budgets to get these products onto our shelves. Yeah? And if this money is not there anymore, we have to charge for ETF savings plans. Not a lot. Yeah, I spoke to one organization, said, but it's not a lot, and wouldn't it be more honest if you just charge 2 or 3 euros? I said, yes, but 2 or 3 euros for a 100 euro savings plan means you can't do the savings plan at all, because an ETF is so nice because it's cheap. 0.2, 0.3, 0.1 management fees. Yeah? If I save 100 euros per month, 150 euros is the average savings plan. If I pay 2 euros, it's 2% suddenly. So the whole idea of cost savings goes out of the window. Yeah? And so my pitch is do it exactly the opposite. Yeah? Ban everyone else, but not the online brokers. It happens that I run an online broker. I have to be sure. I have to be. Yeah. But no. But this is. And the reason why this doesn't come up in these debates, and why a lot of people we speak to have not heard of it for the first time, is because the do-it-yourself investor doesn't have a lobby. They don't have a lobby. No one speaks up for them. And one last thing, because you ask EU versus US, so why is the US better, tighter margins, lower costs than the EU? I have an answer for this. It's tax incentives for insurance products. Most European countries in Germany have all their tax advantages on insurance-linked products. In Germany, you have to buy Riester or Rürup or this stuff. Yeah? Every time I have to speak about this, I have to go on Wikipedia to look up how they work. It's so complicated. Yeah? So all the tax incentives are there. On the normal investing, there's no tax advantage. No tax advantage. In the US, you have this. This is why the US has 401ks. Why is the UK so good? Maybe inducement ban has something to do with it, but a much greater impact had the ISAs and SIP program. Yeah? Why is Australia so good? Maybe inducement ban, maybe not, but the superannuation program, where you can take up to 15% of your gross income and invest it in capital markets without costs. If you want successful and get retail investors to invest, get the tax incentive system right, and not just have it exclusively for the insurance world. That would be my ask.
Of course,
was it positive enough?
I know. No, that's very good. Let's say, but that's of course a tax question at European level is much more difficult than what the Commission is doing. So, yeah, that's much more long term, 10 years, 15 years. I look around if there are already questions. Otherwise, I'll go on because we have already touched upon a lot of issues, and I think it has been very well explained. Yes.
Maybe it's a whole question, but I feel overprotected by some of these institutions. I have no access.
Sorry, because the people online cannot hear if there's no mic. So
I almost feel overprotected by these institutions. I have no access to equity research any longer. Every institutional investor get equity research, and basically I cannot even educate myself. So this is basically Andrea, something where retail investors are really losing out. I cannot
Andrea can respond to this. The Commission has something in its proposals.
Thank you. Does that work? Yeah. Well, obviously there are very different types of investors. There is no doubt. But we also have in MiFID the category of the professional investor. And now we have tried to, who then has access to, doesn't have all the limitations that might exist for a normal investor. And we are actually lowering the threshold for that. So I don't know whether you would then be covered by that, but we clearly try to also make it easier for professional investors. We've tried to heard that call as well, but it's a difficult balance. You can also imagine between protecting. As I said, not everybody is the same, and not everybody is the same type of investor. And already with the rules that we have kind of lowered or make it easier to opt in to become a professional investor, we already face some criticism, maybe not from Better Finance, but from other consumer organizations, that we wouldn't be protecting them enough. So that there would be a risk. So it's a difficult balance, which we have tried to find the right balance. Whether it's a perfect balance, I don't know, but we've tried to address it.
I wanted to have a term account with my bank, but the bank said, no, we don't do this for individual consumers. We do it for professionals. So it's used, these arguments, against us. Because we have to protect you, we don't offer you a well-rewarding product. Anybody else? Otherwise I go on, because there's another aspect we wanted to address, which is consolidated tape. another aspect of MiFIR, which has just been agreed upon, because one of the important things in MiFID is best execution. How can you ensure best execution? Of course, we have in MiFID 6 elements which allow you to define it. For an individual investor, it should be price. But of course, those which are giving us a service will say, look, there is no benchmark for what is the price. Of course, the Commission, like Andrea has explained, is now already trying to define better, let's say, of setting some benchmark. But of course, not only this is happening, but we will have soon a single consolidated tape. So Andrea, if you can briefly explain what it is, and then also, ESMA has worked a lot on that.
No, I'll pass that to ESMA. For the consolidated tape, I recommend inviting my colleague Tilman Luder.
But it has an important impact for best execution and for what is in your proposal.
Yes, no, indeed. Clearly, this is becoming. This is going to become a reality. So we do appreciate it. We have strongly supported it. Therefore, we are happy about this evolution, and we really think that this will have an impact also on the way in which intermediaries deliver best execution, or even identify the components for best execution. Because what is the problem with the best execution? The problem is that, first of all, there is a fragmentation of venues in Europe. So again, and the system vis-à-vis the US, again, is different, both in terms of markets, fragmentation, and in terms of way in which data are reported and are made available to intermediaries. Therefore, there are differences. And therefore, the best execution rule in MiFID is actually a procedural rule. You have to choose the venues which, on a consistent basis, ensure the best possible result, just to mention the rule. But in practical terms, this means that some intermediaries may not access those venues because there are, for example, membership costs, do not access those venues which, on an occasional basis, may actually provide a better outcome to investors. Therefore, the consolidated tape should help to improve the situation. Then what we see in the proposal there, which is the MiFIR, clearly, here we change the relevant regulation. We are not talking about the retail investment strategies anymore, but we are talking about the MiFIR review there. We change it by asking, for example, ESMA to adopt some technical standards on execution policies. On the other hand, what I see a bit contradictory is that in the same legislation, we are dropping completely what we called RTS 27 and 28, which were reporting by venues on transaction data and reporting by intermediaries, above all, on the 5 most used venues that they have identified for their own trading. So on one end, we drop this. On the other end, we ask ESMA to adopt some RTS on improving execution quality, and we would hope that at least in terms of timing, there we will be able to see the outcome of the consolidated tape before starting working on the technical standards. Although the timeline which we see there in the MiFIR review is not exactly consistent with that, because we would be asked to deliver technical standards before that the consolidated tape has has deployed its own effects, basically. This is...
But for some people in the audience, I mean, they will think, look, for equity, we basically have a consolidated tape, or say the difference in price is extremely limited. But the bond markets, which is very important for me.
Yes.
Because another example, I once wanted to buy an Italian bond, and the bank said to me, we don't do this. But I said, look, bank, you're certainly trading Italian government debt. I know we don't do it for retail clients.
Yes.
Just to give another example again, in 2012, 2013, you could buy Italian bonds, and you could make a huge benefit, and they are seen to be safe. Yeah, and I had to give you the floor as well in a moment. But if I ask Salvatore to respond to this issue of bonds.
Yeah, I completely support. I completely agree with what you say. And clearly, again, this brings us also back to the differences of retail market. We have also to admit that there are retail markets differences because, for instance, in a country like Italy, a bonds market is a retail market and was already before. In other countries, but this is quite a unique example. In other countries, this is not the case. And this allows also me to go back 1 second to Eric's comment on the tax differences. Yes, surely. This is not, at EU level, this is always a problem, the impact of tax advantages, tax incentives. However, notwithstanding that, we see in the cost and performance report, putting aside the insurance products, we see that in different member states, the cost and performance of similar products, usage, are significantly different. And this has nothing to do with the insurance tax incentive of that. Just to go back to the issue of the fragmentation of EU capital markets still in different jurisdictions.
And Erik, I had to ask you the price because I heard that consolidated tape is bad for ETFs. Is this correct?
And so two things. I mean, one, because we're talking about different countries and tax incentives, yeah. But the interesting thing I want to mention, it also has, and as I said, yeah, I'm not against these whole looking at advice and advice bans. Yeah, I'm not against that, but it also has nothing to do with the ban. One example: the UK has a full inducement ban since 11 years. Germany doesn't have an inducement ban. Yeah, we can sell insurance products and buy our Porsches with it however we want. Yeah, so the ETF market in Germany is bigger than the UK ETF market, which is surprising already because the UK is the financial hub of Europe. Yeah, all the big wealth managers are there. If you look at the retail participation, retail ETF participation in England does not exist, almost doesn't exist. Yeah. 80 to 90% of the entire ETF volume is done by the institutional wealth managers. In Germany, 60% and above of the entire ETF market is retail people. It goes to 2/3 now. Yeah, so it's because it's less about ban or not ban, it's more about the market infrastructure. Germany has a much better competition about online brokers and a much better market infrastructure. We have local retail exchanges where you can buy these ETFs at super low commissions. In the UK, you have to buy ETFs via the LSE with very high commissions. Yeah, you have to buy them via the main via the main monopoly exchange. There's no also between the online brokers, yeah, big platforms in the UK still charge 12 to 25 pounds per execution, which makes it unattractive for at least small investors. Yeah, so.
Say BaFin is doing a good job.
No, I think it has less to do with BaFin. It has much more to do with the market infrastructure. It has much to do more with the market infrastructure, with transparency, and really enforcing competition. Yeah, and so that would be my point. Yeah, I'm also aware, obviously, that the self-educated investor won't solve everything. There will always be people, they might not have the education or the time that go into the advice. Yeah? So I'm not saying look at the advice, please, but do everything you can to make sure that the great movement that we have, people educating themselves, they go into ETFs, that you support this and not hinder it. And the current proposal, I have to say it, makes it more expensive for these people. Consolidated tape, just to your point, I like the consolidated tape. Yeah? I mean, we already have a consolidated tape internally because we can pay Bloomberg and Reuters and data feeds and put everything in a spreadsheet. Retail investors can't. Yeah? So I'm a big fan. But I'm not a fan that it costs money. And the proposal that was being made, that will be passed, will make it mandatory for the monopoly exchanges to extract money from this. And the retail investors ultimately have to pay for this. You should go back and say a consolidated tape is great, but retail investors have to get it for free. They have to get it for free. Yeah, 50 minutes. Why 50 minutes? Why give an advantage to institutional investors that retail doesn't have? Why? Why are the monopoly exchanges delaying the data for 50 minutes? It's not even their data. Data is created on an exchange when all of us trade. When I buy Tesla and you sell it, and you're not selling Tesla, right? Okay, okay. You're Elon fanboy. So you buy Tesla, I sell it. We create the data. The exchanges, originally, when the model of selling these data streams was invented, the original idea was that they can cover their costs. The monopoly exchanges went far beyond it. It's a huge profit center for them, huge. And consolidated tape, mwah, I like it. But do not charge online retail brokers and online retail clients for it. Yeah? It makes it more expensive and makes the monopoly exchanges rich.
You pay for the 15 minutes to have the data in advance.
No, I would like to get it for free.
from zero, minute zero. Okay, I look around if there are other questions. Otherwise, Alexandra, yes?
Just one quick comment. I know I see Florian. I know we need to finish. The one thing
We
is,
still
of
have
course,
5 minutes, though, so don't worry.
So better finance, of course, does not hinder and does not want to hinder investing in the ETFs. In fact, better finance was one of the stakeholders that was saying it is not possible because it's difficult for the retail investor to invest in something that is not on the shelf. And the reality for the time being, despite of many going online and trying to invest themselves, is that they want to invest, they go nevertheless to the advisor. And with the current situation, they are simply not being advised to invest in simple products such as the ETFs, but not only ETFs, shares and bonds. And maybe in the UK, the situation is a bit different than in the UK, in Germany, because some investors also want to invest not through ETFs, but simply directly in capital markets and simply holding shares. And this should be also possible for them. So, yes, it is possible.
I think Andrea wanted to reply first.
Okay. It is possible, but you need to be financially literate enough to be able to do so.
Indeed, I would like to get a chance as well to reply. You've made your argument very clear. I personally don't agree with that, and you might not be surprised to hear that. I do indeed feel a little bit like Salvatore has said before, when we were looking at trying to ban inducements for the advice scenario, and I personally would be with you. We would agree to that, but politically it's not going to happen. I think we agree on this as well. But I do feel a little bit reminded of what Salvatore has said. First, people were screaming about, oh no, you can't ban it because of the advice. Now you're saying, oh no, you can't ban it for the execution because you're hitting the innovative firms which make it all so cheap. I see that argument. Again, I'm slightly suspicious with arguments, as I have been in the discussion on the advice. The people that were coming to us, telling us about the risk of an advice gap, was always industry. I never heard this argument from the consumers. That makes me a little bit skeptical, and admittedly here again, I don't hear it from the consumers, I hear it from industry. So I'm slightly skeptical about this. In addition, of course, you're saying this comes out of, the money comes out of the marketing budget. Somebody has to pay for it. So the market, the money, it's not for free. So, and maybe you also sell other things than ETFs. Maybe you're brilliant and you have no nudging in there. I don't know, but we do see risks about it, and I don't believe this is for free for the retail investor.
I agree with Andrea, but of course Erik can respond.
No, I mean, this is also why I'm really thankful for this exchange, because I think there's still a lot of misunderstandings. Yeah, so. One is who pays for it.
We only have 1 minute left.
Okay.
Huh?
I didn't say it was for free. The consumer pays for it because he pays the total expense ratio of the ETF. So if you buy an iShares ETF on our platform, it's commission free. And how do you pay? You pay this 0.1, 0.2, 0.3. You pay it over a long time. And a company like BlackRock makes money with it, and that's why they incentivize it so that that you get easy access to it. Yeah. So it's not for free. Who pays for it? The consumer pays for it. Yeah, but it's cheap. You can't beat that price. Yeah, it's cheap. The other is we have all the products on our platform. So we have 3,000 mutual funds on our platform, and we would make more money if people buy them. The funny thing is, no one does. Out of these 16 billion, 70% is in ETFs, 30% is in stocks. Mutual funds below 0.4. The younger investors, maybe I have to say this, 2/3 of our investors are 18 to 35, which is the biggest cohort to buy ETFs. The new investor, they are, and they didn't all study business. They educate themselves about ETFs, and the ETF became the new status symbol of investing. And one last thing, sorry, I have to say this. You say, I hear this and I get it, but I'm a little bit suspicious, I have a feeling. You can't make policies with just a feeling. You need to look at the facts, sorry.
Okay, thank you, point taken. Guillaume, we have to stop, sorry. Any final point? One sentence? No?
Well,
Andrea?
when I said I have the feeling I'm suspicious, I'm in when you speak, I don't know whether you speak German. I'm saying for me the argument might have a Geschmäckle. That's what I was saying. But in substance, as I said before, the argument is I don't believe this is for free, and there are, and we have it in the Netherlands where you can buy ETFs, not for free. There is a fee, but this fee is very limited, and it's very clear and very transparent.
Okay, thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Alexandra. Thank you, Salvatore, and thank you, Eric. Fascinating panel. I mean, brought out a lot of issues, but we can go on for a few more hours about the subject. So, because it's hotly debated in Brussels. So, thank you. I pass on the floor back to the organizers.
Thank you very much for being here today. That was a very nice panel. Don't forget your presence. And I think that this debate will continue with all of the subjects there.